who are murdered are drunk, and 50% of the people who kill them are drunk. And
this dude is super smart.
My question is, as a redeemed progressive, what is the key to empowering men in the Me Too age while maintaining healthy boundaries and strong behavioural expectations?
We've had relatively reliable birth control since 1960. Okay, that's not very long. And we underestimate the unbelievable technological triumph of birth control. It's the hydrogen bomb, it's the transistor, like it's a major league transformation in human interaction. Women are now free from involuntary reproduction. That's never been the case in the entire history of the planet. Okay, we don't know exactly what to do about that. Okay, so the first idea in the 60s was, hell, let's party. And you could see why. It's like what the rules for not engaging in promiscuous sexual intercourse seemed to have vanished.
That's low-key true. Like, if you really think about it, now is like the time where, in any other time in history, like this past 60, 70 years, where you were literally able to have intercourse and like genuinely not face the threat of pregnancy. But before this happened, this is not a real thing. Like, when you had intercourse, there was a very, very, very high chance you got pregnant. But now it's like times have definitely changed.
We had a couple of decades of experimentation. It's like, well, how'd that go? Little hard on the family, I would say. That's not so good for kids. AIDS, that wasn't a plus. Could have killed us all. And it mutated, particularly to take advantage of promiscuous sex, because viruses are very tricky things. So it turns out that sex is a little bit more complicated than we thought. Well, it actually turns out that it's a lot more complicated than we think. Okay, and now it's 50, 60 years later, and we're trying to sort this out. It's like, well, when is it okay to have sex? Exactly. And when is it not okay to have sex? And what does it mean that it's okay? And what does consent mean? And the answer to that is, well, we never used to have to think these things through, because the rule was don't have sex until you get married. That was the rule. Now that isn't the rule. Okay, so what's the rule? Well, we're not having a conversation about the rule. We're waiting till someone does something that seems like it might be untoward and then mobbing them and trying to extract the rule out that way. And it's not a very effective way of doing it. You want to decrease campus rape? That's easy. Get rid of alcohol. No one has that conversation. It's like, I did my PhD work on alcohol. 50% of the people who are murdered are drunk, and 50% of the people who kill them are drunk. And
this dude is super smart, bro. One thing I always feel respect about Jordan Peterson is that this dude is a true intellect, bro. Like, he really don't play when it comes to this type of stuff, man. So, like, when he's talking to students and stuff, it's like you're literally in, like, a lecture class. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I feel like I'm in class right now.
Almost all the date rape situations are consequences of excess intoxication. But yet there's a party culture on campuses, and anything goes. And you also have this strange thing, especially on the radical left, which is unbelievably paradoxical, where absolutely every form of sexual expression imaginable is 100% permissible because sex is fine, but it's so dangerous that while you're dancing with someone at a Princeton mixer, you have to ask them 2 or 3 times if it's okay for you to continue. And that's actually the case, by the way. I'm not making that up. It's like, well, both of those things can't be true. Now, what's happening, I think, on the Me Too end of things and the affirmative consent end of things is the old sexual taboos are reasserting themselves. The idea that we can extract sex out from emotional intimacy, and especially emotional intimacy, I would say, psychological intimacy, maybe even from long-term relationship,
But that's facts though. Like, intercourse is a really, really, really serious topic, and sometimes we like downplay how serious it is. And when he's talking about college campuses, that kind of relates because I am a college student. So when I hear this type of stuff, I'm like, dang, like removing alcohol, that's never even crossed my mind, because when you're in college, like not saying my particular college, I'm not gonna say that, but the college lifestyle, it really promotes alcoholism. It promotes partying, and that's just the culture in at least America when it comes to colleges. So if you were to remove alcohol from colleges, the entire culture would shift. I don't even know if that's a realistic thing you can do, because that's like the whole culture. I don't even know if that's possible. I'm not gonna lie.
I don't believe it's a tenable idea. I don't think we can do it. And a lot of what we're seeing is the backlash against that. It's like, well, I feel used, because one of the things that's happening on the really radical end of the anti-sexual abuse movement is the idea that, well, if you have intercourse with someone and then you regret it the next day, that's evidence that it wasn't consensual.
Yeah, that's not.
It is, in a sense, evidence that it wasn't consensual, because it's evidence that you didn't bloody well think it through, right? It was good for last night, but it's not good for today. It's not very wise. The question is, well, what constitutes consent? And we need to have a very serious conversation about that. Like, under what circumstances is it acceptable to give consent? But we're not mature enough to have that conversation. We want it both ways. We want to be able to do whatever we want, with whoever we want, whenever.
And that's what I've said this in last videos. I'm not going to talk about consent necessarily, but when you come to politics and stuff, and you're always blurring the lines and everything is left on a subjective playing field, when these type of things happen, it's always so hard to like judge and critique, because everything's left up for interpretation. Like, sometimes in society, we really do need to have those conversations like, okay, this is that, and this is that. Because if we don't say that, and we just say, what, everything's for interpretation, everything's in the eyes of the beholder, you don't really know what to say or do when it comes to, for example, consent, I guess. Like, you need to have firm boundaries on what is and what isn't in some cases, especially when your life is at danger, or your health is at danger, or society is at danger. You need to have firm boundaries sometimes.
Whenever we want, with no consequences, and we want there never to be any trouble about consent. It's like, well, no, that's not going to happen. I don't think that sex works very well outside of committed relationships. I don't think there's any evidence that it does. There's a strong proclivity across cultures for the enforcement, social enforcement of long-term monogamy. And there's reasons for that. And I think you deviate from that at your peril. So now, if you want to deviate from that, there's all sorts of reasons to do it. And I can understand why people are interested in adventure and all of that. But, my sense also as a clinician is, you only really get to try out about 5 people in your life. You have to make a decision pretty damn quick. Like between 20 and 30, there's a lot of things to get straight, and long-term mate is usually one of them. And most of the time, people should be more careful with their sexual behavior when they're young, especially when they're drunk.
And you know what's crazy? This take is actually extremely controversial. Like, what he's saying right now is not like, if he was to say this in the wrong crowd, it would be a huge problem, but it sounds like he's just trying to protect people. Because when you have these type of discussions, it could get extremely, extremely dangerous, especially when you're young. Because when you're young, you're more impulsive, or you just aren't as wise as when you're older. So he's telling young people this, but this is honestly, like, low-key a controversial take, which is insane if you really think about it.
Than they are. And I just think it's so interesting that all of the taboo reconstruction is coming from the radical left. It's not what you'd expect at all. You'd think it'd be the damn right-wing Christians complaining about, sexual immorality. It's like, no, it's the radical lefties. You have to have signed consent before making any physical move. And then that's so what? Really? Who thought that up? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. You know how awkward that would be? You know, you're supposed to be able to do a little bit of nonverbal reading, right? I mean, that's part of romance. You don't see you ever see a movie where the two people who are dating exchange consent notes? Like, that doesn't happen. So it's an unrealistic solution. But I think the real solution is that despite the fact that we have reliable birth control,
it is crazy because people, and this is insane to watch, because like the super left-leaning radical left are becoming right, and the super right radical right are becoming left. Like, where they're saying you have to have you have to have written out consent forms, and now the right saying like, no, we don't. Like, it's just like everything is switching sides. Like, what is what now? I don't even know. Like, I've taken the political test before, and I took one from 10 years ago, and I was center, but I took it now. Like, it just, everything is just so weird now. I don't even know what's happening. I'm just living my life, though.
We're going to have to relearn what the acceptable rules of propriety are with regards to sexual relationships. One of the things I often tell my young clients is, don't do anything physically with anyone that you wouldn't talk to them about. Because if you're too damn embarrassed to talk about it, well, maybe it's a little premature in the relationship to actually do it. And then there's harm in it. You know, there's emotional harm in it on both parties. There's the cheapening of both parties. So it's going to take us a long time to sort this out. But hopefully we can do it in a serious manner, and it won't be merely a matter of mobbing those who seem to have made an error. So
this dude is smart, man. If you have any suggestions, comment them down below. If you have any thoughts on the video, comment down below. It's LFR Jojo, and I'll see y'all next time.